Okay, now we're going to go over some of the code of the program that I gave you, that I said I'd be doing a short video on. And on this one, it's mostly just looking at using a form to get data and to work with displaying data, and there'll be some JavaScript involved. So if I wanted to work with this auction, of course, we still have our HTML and our CSS that we would normally work with, but now we're concentrating on the script. So on the bidder ID, there's information entered, and the bid amount you enter, and then we can submit or remove the last bid if we have some information in our bidding history. So we can have different pieces and keep submitting, and it also keeps up with the last bid and when the bidding ends. So I can always go in here and remove last, and it will remove the most recent one. Okay, so let's look at some of the code. Again, when I open this up, it's the auction HTML and the bids.js. Now I'm going to go through the HTML first and just, again, talk about some of the things you have to have linked to. Of course, we have to have some type of link so we can interpret our HTML5 through the browser. We have any CSS, and then now we also have JS that we're working with. Now here, notice that we do have a character set that we're telling it to use UTF-8 and not any of the foreign or any of other symbols. Okay, now on here, first thing you got to remember, on form, all the pieces always have a name and an ID. Okay, and normally they're the same. Notice on this form, I don't have an action and I do not have a method because it's not executing anything other than some script. All right, so I have my header that I'm working with, and I've applied all my tags. And then whenever I reach, I have my table, but at some point I'm going to reach the input that has an ID, a name, whether I can edit it, and then I have others that not only can I edit them, but I can also get any other attributes that are not listed here. Like most of these on input, again, text is normally the default, but there's also a value for this input that I can get to. I could tell it I'm after the bid amount, period, value, and that will get the value that's typed in. Okay, so I have my two different types of buttons. Now, notice it is not a submit or a reset, but the value does say submit and remove last. What triggers something happen is an action by the user. I can tell it that on click, execute this function. On click for this, execute this function. Now again, neither one of these functions are anywhere in our HTML. So I can go back up and look. It's in my bid.js. So we're going to go look at the bid.js. Now, notice on the bid.js, anything that is not in a function will automatically execute when I load my page. So I've created 3 new arrays that are going to be available to any function at any time, also to the HTML body of the HTML page. All right, so the first thing that happens is when I click, I get to the add bid. Notice that it does not look like it has anything passed, but we do have access to all of those. Of course, arrays. So what happens here, whenever we click on the submit, it means we've filled in the information. And again, think about the DOM. The DOM, you have a document object model, and you have to tell it starting with the document, period. Within that document, I have a bid form, period. Within the bid form, I have a field called bid ID, And of that part of the form, that input name, I want the value of it. Okay. So I'm grabbing the value that's been typed in there, and I add it to my array. And remember, we have a shift and an unshift telling us where this information is being put. And again, it's always being put from the top. And I'm also going after the bid amount and putting it in bids. So I have both pieces of information, the ID and the amount, and I'm getting the values. Now notice that if I put all of that on the left side of an assignment, then I would be setting the value for that name in that form in that document. Okay. Now remember, I've got to build this time right here. So I have to go in, and again, we're using a library. So you can usually count on libraries of a date fashion. So I want to get today's date. I want to separate out the date because it has hours, minutes, seconds, milliseconds, and I can get each piece of information from it. The only reason I have now here is because, again, that's the object name, and I load them into my individual variables. Remember, the variables are defined by the data you put in them. Now I can go back in here and make sure there's leading zeros for the minutes and seconds. So if our minutes are less than 10, I need to add a 0 in front of the 1 through 9. Else it's just the minutes. Same thing for the seconds. That means if it's seconds is less than 10, add a 0. Else keep what I have. And then add all of them together. This syntax should not look any different than what you should be used to. And then add it to the array. And remember, our array starts with the most recent data. Once I get through with this, I go up and call the write bid, and it's pretty easy. All I have to do is cycle through any one of my arrays, build what I want to display, and then set the value of each name attribute of the form in the document. So notice I'm setting the value for that input, for that form name of the form itself in that document. That's the name of the element inside the form in the document. Same here, same here. So I'm setting all of this. Okay. Once I get done with it, it cycles through and goes right back to my HTML. It stays right there because I don't tell it anything else to do inside the action. And of course, our on click when we remove is where we set everything and remove it. We clear out our bidders. We clear out our bids. So I take away the very last, or excuse me, the very first one on here, and then I rewrite it if I want to remove one bid. You shift, meaning you pop it off the top, and then rewrite the whole thing again. And that's very basic JavaScript. We've added one action by the user. We'll look at a more complex JavaScript and jQuery next.